Personnel and Animal Welfare Committee to order. I'd like to ask that without objection we put item number 4 on consent. And otherwise, if we could start with item number 1.
Item number 1, CAO and Department of Animal Services reports relative to proposed supplemental agreement to contract number C117333 with Spay Neuter Project of LA Inc. to provide spay and neuter services for cats, dogs, and rabbits adopted from the East Valley Shelter and pets owned by qualifying residents.
Whoever would like to
Janice
walk
Peng,
us
you,
through
Office
this?
of the CAO. Before you is a request from Animal Services and a CAO recommendation to approve the extension of the contract with Spay Neuter Project of Los Angeles, Inc. to operate a spay and neuter services clinic out of the East Valley Animal Care Center. The contract extension is for 1 year with two 1-year options to extend. The maximum per year for the contract would be $500,000. The original contract was a 3-year contract, and this would be the 4th year of the contract to provide spay and neuter services both for animals adopted out of the shelter and for the public. And Animal Services can give some more information.
Good afternoon, council members. John Chavez, Department of Animal Services. So yes, they do the spay and neuter surgeries for our shelters, but the other key thing that they're proposing is a wellness clinic, which would provide services such as dental care, any skin conditions, removal of growths on the animal. And what they would do is they would provide those services at a very low cost, and they would target low-income residents with those services. So it's a clinic that we really believed should be out there, and that's an additional sort of element of their contract. This organization has been without a contract, council members, for a couple of months now. So if you approve it, we would request that it go forth with the City Council. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have.
So how would prices compare to, in the wellness clinic, compared to going to a private veterinarian?
They would be less. We would have our chief vet make sure that those prices are less than going to just a regular veterinarian. It's something that in the contract we would be the final arbiters on those prices. If we think they're too high, we would negotiate and have them reduce their costs. But they will be focusing on providing low-cost services to low-income residents.
Do we not have any specific ideas of how much less?
No.
I'm sorry. I'm the clinic manager from the SNPLA.
Why don't you come up here for a second? And state your name for the record.
My name is Jessica Lopez, and I'm the Pico Revere clinic manager. I run the spay and neuter services for the Pico Revere location, as well as the now running wellness clinic, separate from the LA Animal Services currently.
And do you have a better idea what the cost difference is between a private vet and?
Yeah, our pilot was our Pico Rivera location, which has now been running for a little bit over a year and a half. On average, most general practice veterinarians charge anywhere between $50 to $75 for the initial exam, and we offer for low-income families, just like our spay and neuter services, if they can show proof of gross income less than $40,000, to the exam be at $35, and for regular people who make greater than $40,000, it's $45. So that enables a lot of owners to kind of be able to juggle their money to be able to afford more treatments, as opposed to $75 exams and then having maybe $25 left over for treatment. We can allow them to do a lot more treatments on their animals that way.
That's great. That's pretty substantial savings. Does the program take vouchers?
As of yet, we currently don't, but that is something that we can discuss with you guys, or how you guys want to work.
Actually, point of clarification, they do accept vouchers. I don't know if you're talking about the Pico Rivera facility, but the one on East Valley, which is the clinic in question, they do take vouchers for either $70 for low income or $30 for everybody else.
Okay. And what's the reimbursement rate to vets? Is it the same as...
$70 for low income and $30 for non-low income residents.
Any other questions? Comments?
Out of just curiosity, you mentioned, Mr. Chavez, you were without a contract for a short period of time?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, in looking at the contract, it states very clearly in the contract that the department has the ability to extend the term without, with just the general manager's approval. So we went based on that. City attorney took a look at it and said, no, that's not really true. So we have to go through this process. There were a couple of cancellations, both at the board and the committee, and so that kind of extended the period of time. So we were under the impression that we could approve this contract internally, but we were told that we couldn't.
The council instructions didn't mention the option to extend the contract for the additional years. So the city attorney would find that that the department would have to come back to council for the approval to extend the contract.
Well, if there's no other comments, we should approve this proposed extension without objections.
Mr. Chair, can we send that forthwith to council?
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
So we'll send that forthwith. Thank you. Item number 2.
Item number 2, Department of Animal Services report relative to proposed changes to the New Hope program's policies and fees.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jan Selder, and I'm the Director of Field Operations, and I oversee the New Hope program for LA Animal Services. Give you a real brief overview of the New Hope program in case you're not familiar with it. We have over 220 rescue partners signed up with us. They have to be 501c3s, nonprofit, to be a New Hope partner. And the idea behind the program, it's been around since about 2007, is to partner up with rescue organizations to come into the shelters and obviously help pull the animals that are most in need of adoption so that they're not in the shelters and they're out in the rescue community and then they find them homes. The New Hope policy is sort of a living, breathing policy. It has to change with needs, and our needs change. And so these changes on this policy, you'll see, sort of reflect what's going on in the community and the rescue community right now. And what we're asking is for a fee increase. We discovered that right now the fee for a New Hope to pull is $40, and that is a sterilization deposit. So that just is covering the sterilization of the animal. It doesn't cover the cost of the microchip that we implant or the vaccines or any of the other things that that go into the animals. So that's we're finding that we really need to help cover our microchip fees. So we're just raising it $10, but with that we're offsetting it a bit by making the adoption fees for the animals that are the most in need, which you'll see are the red and the blue alert animals. And the blue alert animals that have medical needs that need out of the shelter, they're expensive to care for. So for our New Hope partners, we'd like to be able to see them take those with no fees because we know they're going to put money into them. And then the red alert animals are animals that are possibly going to be euthanized because we just don't have the space. They're adoptable, but we don't have room at the shelters, and those are the ones that are in critical need of getting out. And sometimes those are long-term. Those are some of the animals that are harder to place, so the rescue might have them for a while. So again, we'd like to see the fees be waived for those animals most in need. And it also includes animals under 8 weeks old. The shelter by law can't adopt anything out until it's 8 weeks old, and we can't hold on to baby kittens and puppies when they come in. When they're 2 weeks old, we'll have them for 6 weeks. So again, it's where our New Hope partners can really help us by getting those critical animals out. And by waiving the fees, they can come in and adopt them. And they don't have to pay the sterilization fee up front, but they do have to provide sterilization as soon as the kitten or puppy's old enough.
Now, what's the current cost to adopt an animal that's on the red or blue list?
It's $40.
So we have a slight increase on the bulk of the animals, but on the animals that are in the most urgent situations, we're completely eliminating the fee.
Correct.
What do we think that will do in terms of adoptions?
What we're hoping is it'll increase the animals that most need to be out of the shelters. Will increase the availability for New Hopes to come in and get those animals. So in theory, then the animals that would possibly euthanize won't be anymore. We can already adopt out the population that's not on the red and blue list because we're doing our own adoptions. So our hope is that it'll make it more cost financial for them to come in and pull those animals. So we're hoping to see New Hope adoptions go up because there's no fees for those animals.
Did you also add older animals to the no
Everything
fees?
over 5 years was added to.
Seems like a great change. What do we think the overall impact on the general fund will be?
Would probably increase. Last year, there were about 6,600 New Hope adoptions. If we charge $50, it'd be about $350,000 that we would. It'd be an increase of about $100,000 over the $40 current spay-neuter deposit.
Did we calculate in the savings, which I assume would be there, from not having to euthanize the animals that get adopted out instead?
I don't think that we
No.
actually calculated that in. No.
But there is a cost to that.
There is a cost, and there's a cost to holding on to them for longer periods of time, too. And there's also would be an increase, possibly, with the animals that are adoptable. We would be adopting them at the regular rate to the public instead of at the $40 New Hope fee if they were focusing on the red and blue and the geriatric.
Sounds like a great idea. Other comments, questions?
You were marketing some of the animals today on the 1 o'clock news, weren't you?
Yeah, I was there.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I almost had to bring those puppies with me just to get here in time.
Mr. O'Farrell,
Just
any
real quick,
comments?
Great work. I support this as well. And so the extra $10 would offset some of the microchipping, the inoculations, et cetera. About what is that total approximately? So we know what we're looking at in terms of the partial $10 subsidy.
Well, I don't know if this answers the question. I mean, it cost us about almost $70 to sterilize an animal. So even if we charge $50, we're still at a loss. So most of that $50 would be used for paying the sterilization costs. We'd like some of that money to go for microchips, but we haven't determined what that breakdown would be.
And just to add to that, we're changing this from a sterilization deposit fee and calling it a flat fee, which allows us to use the extra portion and put it into the microchip budget instead of only being able to use that $40 for spay-neuter. We can use it for other things.
Very good. Sounds like a great program change. So, if there's no objections, we'll pass that item as well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
and ask the city attorney to draft up the appropriate ordinances for that. Item number 3.
Item 3, Bureau Sanitation Report relative to the exemption for 10 plant equipment trainee positions, class code 1107 for the Bureau of Sanitation pursuant to Charter Section 1001D1.
Good afternoon, council members. Neil Guglielmo with the Bureau of Sanitation. What you have before you is the Bureau's request to expand our very successful plant equipment trainee program from the existing 10 positions we have to 20. A number of reasons for doing that. Obviously, with our wastewater treatment program, our clean water program, we have operations are going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at our 4 major plants. And these positions are absolutely critical to maintain those safe and effective operations of the plants. These wastewater treatment operators, that series is one of our critical class series in the Bureau of Sanitation. These plant equipment trainees can come in from outside or from other city classifications. They receive training and they are prepared for the exam and certification requirements to become a wastewater treatment operator. And so it's an opportunity to bring in folks from the outside as well as further develop and provide mobility for staff in other areas within the city of Los Angeles. We are facing some real challenges in this class series. Specifically, we have a very high vacancy rate. We're over 20% now, close to 21% vacancy rate. And in looking at our existing wastewater treatment operators, more than 50% will be eligible for retirement next year. So you're looking at a substantial amount of potential attrition that can occur, especially with the last MOU increase went into effect in January of 2013, and 12 months following that, January 2014, there might be some incentive for some of our more seasoned wastewater treatment operators to take that opportunity to retire. So the Bureau is obviously very concerned. We will continue to recruit into the regular class series as we normally do and provide for those exams. But this provides another opportunity for us to get some really talented employees, either from the city or outside the city, to come in and take on these really important responsibilities for the Bureau.
How is the program funded? How would these positions be funded?
They're entirely funded by the wastewater fund, so the SCM, Sewer Construction Maintenance Fund. So it's all the ratepayer funds and businesses and residential customers of the city's wastewater system.
And do you have a good list of internal candidates that are ready to go?
We have, within the Bureau of Sanitation, within Public Works and our city departments, there's a huge potential pool of candidates for this position. What's important is that they have a high school educational background. Some units in science or technical are obviously very desired. And then as they're selected off the list, they're provided with training and then opportunities to develop themselves to become certified as wastewater treatment operators. So in looking at the entry-level wastewater treatment operator 1, these plant equipment trainees would meet the qualifications for that entry-level position. And, it could be, we've gotten employees from all across the city in the past that have applied for this opportunity. Anyone from a clerk typist, for example, or a mechanic or a truck operator, but it could be any class series. As long as they meet the minimum requirements, they could be considered for the position.
So do you have a plan for recruiting the additional folks beyond the city family?
We'll put the notification out there like we did in the past. The notification goes out through our partners in the personnel department to all the city employees, and we post it on the personnel department's website. So for prospective candidates from outside the city can also look at that and apply. Obviously, when we look at experienced treatment operators already, we have that treatment operator class recruitment efforts and those exams that are ongoing to fill those critical classes. But for the plant equipment trainee, we get a very large response. We typically will have hundreds of candidates applying for a very small number of positions.
Very good. Other questions or comments? If not, this should move forward as well without objection.
Great. Thank you.
Item number 5.
Item 5, Bureau of Engineering report relative to the recommendations identifying changes to processes pertaining to the historic core sidewalk dining to include hiring 1 civil engineering associate 2 position in the Bureau of Engineering dedicated to sidewalk dining R permits on a citywide basis. This matter was also referred to the Public Works and Gang Reduction Committee and was heard by them previously and approved.
Good afternoon, Len Paco, Bureau of Engineering. We submitted this report in response to motion to requesting the Bureau to look into expediting sidewalk dining permits and looking at the cost of permitting sidewalk dining as well. And we have 3 recommendations that we submitted. The first one is to look at our process, and we looked at our process and we eliminated a couple of items in that process to reduce the time that it would take to permit it, and as a result we're able to use a lower tier fee for the cost of issuing the sidewalk dining permit. And those two items that we proposed to remove was the notification process for sidewalk dining, and also the field work that's usually associated when we get these applications. And then the third is to request a dedicated staff member to issue sidewalk dining permits citywide.
Now, if you streamline the process, presumably that means less work. Do you still need the extra person?
Well, we have about 60 revocable permits that, if you were to apply for a sidewalk dining permit today, there's about 60 revocable permits ahead of you, and so just getting to we take these applications on that queue, and of the 60, about 12 are sidewalk dining permits that are waiting in line currently. And so the staff that we have who's not dedicated to sidewalk dining is processing all those revocable permits.
And this is focused on the historic core of downtown, but this position presumably would help on sidewalk dining permits citywide, correct?
Yes.
So, how much of an increase do we think we'll have in demand based on the streamlined process and based on the pilot program in the
current
historic
cost,
core?
The current cost of sidewalk dining permit is $1,926 at this time. With the streamlined process that we're gonna that's gonna lower the fee down to $577, which is the tier 1 fee, and by doing that and having a dedicated staff, we expect these permits to be turned around very quickly, and as a result, we hope to encourage restaurants to come in and apply for them quickly.
Yeah, personally, I'm a fan of sidewalk dining, and I think it generates a lot of excitement in the areas where it's used and more activity. The city has an odd requirement, as I recall, that there has to be a 7-foot wide area for passage, whereas ADA only requires a 4-foot wide area. And I know that's been a bureaucratic snafu for efforts at outdoor dining in my district. Is there a reason for the 7 feet? And might we, as we try to streamline this process, reduce that somewhat?
I think part of that 7 feet is because when you have tables and chairs out on the sidewalk, you'd also want to provide some space for the servers to go and serve the customers and leave space for pedestrians along the sidewalk. And the 7 feet actually predates me, so that's my...
I mean, to me, it seems unnecessary, to be honest. I don't think there's anywhere where there's so much foot traffic that a waiter couldn't wait 2 seconds for somebody to pass by and then walk through. I think it's a step in the wrong direction to keep this policy. I wonder if, as part of this item, we could also ask for the department to go back and look at whether or not we might ease that policy a little bit. Because I know we've had a few battles over this where we've had to get variances anyway. And it's no different than any other circumstance where there are pedestrians, and it just isn't really anything other than an impediment to moving forward with this kind of outdoor dining. So as long as we're doing everything else to move in the right direction, we should probably at least examine that as well.
Sure, we can certainly do that.
Any comments, questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would second that. I don't see why it couldn't be 5 feet instead of 7, because even if a server is there taking orders, it would still allow plenty of ingress and egress, I would think.
Sure.
Or even if in the odd case where someone puts a chair where it shouldn't be, it would still have plenty of width. So I would like to support that as well. In relation to the streamlined process, do you foresee a situation wherein an inspector could make findings in the immediate where the sidewalk is plenty wide enough, where it's not a historic surface, and where there's just absolutely no foreseeable reason why a permit couldn't be issued with a 24-hour turnaround, for example? And I know you're talking about the B permit process, but do you think that you could streamline the process to make those types of findings?
Yeah,
Uncomplicated situations?
Yeah, the sidewalk dining is actually a revocable permit process, and then if there is any construction like a railing, if you want to put a railing and drill cores into the sidewalk, then you need to get an A permit. So the B permit is actually, we don't use the B permit. Yeah, so it would be an A permit, and that's when the inspector would come out and inspect it. Now, as far as the turnaround, we as part of the revocable permit process, we require that there be a waiver of damages signed, and also insurance verification. So that's we prepare the documents for that, give it to the applicant, they get it notarized, and so it's not like a 24-hour, a one-day process usually. And we usually look at the drawings that they submit with the dimensions and verify out in the field whether those dimensions and the number of tables and chairs actually fit. So but without having to go out to the field now, we would use Google Earth or whatever and plans that we have available to see and try to verify those dimensions.
And with the streamlined process, how as it is designed, how much more quickly would a revocable permit be issued, given we're hiring this additional individual, than it is now?
Well, it would
matter
be
of weeks, matter of months.
It would be a two-step process. If we had an individual, they call in and set up a meeting, and in that meeting, before the meeting, we would advise them of what to bring and information, and during that meeting, we'll make a determination there and then, what we would allow as far as tables and chairs and any other planters or whatever in that initial meeting. And in that meeting, they will also be given the waiver of the waiver documents and information. And once they get that back to us, then we'll issue the permit.
And so how much more quickly do you think this new process, how much time would you shave off the existing time frame, approximately?
This is Shahin Bedin. I work with LEM, Central District Bureau of Engineering. Right now, the process is a two-tier process. Applicant submits an application, we review it, we tell them what's not in there, if they're missing a drawing, and then we review their drawing, we send them a letter that tells them what is required for us to issue the permit. And a lot of the lag time stays there on the applicant's part because they disappear for months. Usually, they need to do the liability insurance, waiver of damages, work with us on the drawings they submit. If it's not sufficient information, we do a field trip, and then after those things are satisfied, we'll issue them the permit. So a lot of it is on our time, and a lot of it is on the applicant's time. With the new process, as Lem said, we'll just have a meeting with them originally. Before the meeting, we'll call them up to bring a drawing with them. We don't do field investigation anymore. We don't do notification anymore. The notification is a 14-day waiting period, which by eliminating that, we just save 14-day right there and then. However, if there is any protests after the permit is issued, then it's going to be referred to the council office of that district for the resolution to it. And the permit may be revoked if the protest has legit reasons to it, or it may be referred to Board of Public Works, which then would require a higher deposit and a much longer period of time.
But right now, the Tier 1 fee, the $577, allows for about a little less than 4 hours of staff time to get full reimbursement. So our effort is going to be around that amount of time.
And that includes the staff at the counter working on the application and myself that I would review and sign the permits.
So, but my bottom line is, and that's all good, do you think this will cut down on the time it takes for a business to get a sidewalk dining permit?
Absolutely, it will. I mean, at the least, it will do the 2-week notification.
Yeah,
It'll
14
take away.
days for.
It'll take away the field investigation, which was, at least when it's in the queue, and by the time it comes up and the field investigation is done. So there'll be queues will be only for the sidewalk dining operation, because now we have one body just allocated to do sidewalk dining.
Okay, and lastly, please flag the historic Hollywood Walk of Fame, because people are drilling into it, and it is a historic landmark.
Right.
And sometimes they claim they have the permit to do so. So does that show up on your map as a no?
I've worked with your staff at your office, and we have come up with conditions that would prevent any damage like that to the sidewalk. We have never issued a sidewalk dining permit with attached railing at Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Okay, Terrific. Thank you.
I do want to add on that 7-foot clearance. Part of the reasons why the 7-foot was put in, as Lem mentioned, we are allowing some space for the server to serve the food beyond the sidewalk dining tables and chairs. The remaining of that 7 feet, the ADA requirement is for passage of one wheelchair going through in one-way direction. Now, if you have a span of 100 feet of tables and chairs or 50 foot of a table and chairs, and you only have a 4 feet or 5 feet clear, that means you're allowing just the wheelchair to go this way, on one way. How about the pedestrian traffic coming the other way? So do they have to wait till this wheelchair is gone through, or can be the 7 feet so you have pedestrian traffic both ways?
It's a two-way access.
Two-way access.
So we'll review that, though. Come back.
Thank you. Any other comments? Questions? We do have one speaker from Council District 14, Eric Martel.
Good afternoon, Committee. Eric Martel from Council District 14. The reason we submitted the motion just to do the pilot program in historic core is because we heard a lot of the businesses in downtown of the long, sensitive process it actually it took to issue the B permit. So the fee, like the department said, is about $1,800, and the staffing isn't there to actually do it. So the way the department explained to our office was the position that actually does the over-the-counter permitting process throughout the day. They have a stack of the B permits, specifically for sidewalk dining, that gets worked on after the regular duties and responsibilities of the position of that Tier 2 or associate position is. So in terms of the recommendation, we're excited to move forward with the pilot program. What we do want to do is, in terms of we're super excited about how simplified the process will be now, and definitely bring that fee down from $1,800 to about $520, and it puts a lot of the work on the actual applicant, and just with and having the department to oversee the guidelines. The one thing that we're looking into while we were vetting this in Public Works Committee, we heard about 2 times, is that most of these brick and mortar businesses, especially in historic areas in Hollywood and downtown, out in the San Fernando Valley as well, is they're mom and pop shops and didn't really allocate for sit down dining. And this definitely promotes more of at least a revenue generating, revitalizing business corridors in smaller communities as well. So we're excited to move forward with this. We also were thinking, and this is down the future, depending on how the pilot program works, is that instead of having businesses apply for a B permit, that this should be like a by right permit through the planning process as well, since a lot of businesses are already opening up, and most businesses now are applying a B permit for their sidewalk dining permit while they're opening their new businesses. We've seen that trend in downtown. I'm sure it happens in Hollywood, and it's something that we're trying to also work with the planning department where we can set it up in that kind of a streamlined process, since they already go through the building safety permits for occupancy and all that stuff. So, thank you.
Very good. Well, if there's no objections...
Council members, I'd like to make note of one thing. One of the requests was to exempt the position from the managed hiring process.
Yes, that wasn't discussed yet.
The recommendation from the CAO is, the standard recommendation is to not make a different determination on that in committee or council, but send it to the managed hiring committee for determination.
Is there anyone here to speak to the reasons for that request? Well, if there's no one here to make the request and justify it, I would agree with the suggestion to send it on to managed hiring. So,
I'm sorry, Chairperson. And it was also from the report. It wasn't clear if they were requesting a brand new position authority or it was to fill an existing position authority. And I just want to make sure that the recommendation is correct, so they could.
And I had assumed it was a new position authority.
It's a new authority, a resolution authority. Yes, new resolution authority position.
Okay, which then would need to be, the recommendation, the way it reads right now, doesn't provide the authority for a resolution authority for I believe it's a civil engineer associate 2 position. So then if that's the intent, then I would ask that the recommendation be amended to authorize a new 1 resolution authority position at that classification, and that it be subject to allocation by the personnel department, and also subject to the pay grade review of the CAO prior to being filled. That would be the normal process.
Well, if you can word that properly, and I don't have to say that back.
Yeah, I'll send them an email. And also to clarify, and also on the recommendations, it states that this would just be for the historic core, then it wouldn't be a citywide program. And I heard a council member ask about that, and I just want to make sure.
And my understanding was that the position itself would apply to all outdoor dining.
Yeah.
Okay, because the way the recommendations are written here, on recommendation 2, it clearly says that that it's just going to be for the historic core. I think even recommendation 3 establishes the fee for the historic core sidewalk dining permits. So I just want to make sure that would need to then be changed to make it more general, that this would not just be limited to the historic core.
Recommendation 1.
Recommendation number 2 and 3.
On the report dated August 19th.
Recommendation 1 states it's a citywide position.
The position would be for citywide, yeah, on recommendation 1.
Yes, but number 2, then it says for a 2-year historic core pilot implementation.
Yeah, that would be the revised policy. That would be the revised process that we were proposing.
And
Now, would that process only be for the historic core?
Correct.
And
So the revised process at $577 would apply to the historic core only, but the position would be,
the position will help expedite all the requests. It just,
yes,
if it's somewhere outside of the historic corridor, they would go through the old
the
process.
old process.
But it would presumably go more quickly because you had this additional position.
Okay.
The queue would be smaller. I mean, now it's 60, then will be, if right now the thing was done, it would be 12 sidewalk dinings rather than 60 applications of all kind of revocable.
Yeah, there's, in our queue right now, there's 60 revocable permits, not B permits, but they're revocable permits. There's 60 there that have a combination of sidewalk dining, maybe retaining walls, maybe other structures that are encroaching in the public right-of-way. But if this were the case and it was dedicated for public, for sidewalk dining, then we have on queue about 12 right now. And obviously, if it gets encouraged, then there's your queue will vary, throughout the year.
I've got a question. With that clarification, then, if you find that your historic core pilot program works with the new fee structure, would then is there an ability for you all to come back and give a recommendation that we adopt that fee structure citywide?
Yes.
Okay. So,
absolutely.
So
yeah.
can we build that in somehow to memorialize that so that how long is your?
It's a 2-year pilot.
Okay.
And so we can report back at that time.
Or maybe sooner.
But why don't you?
Yeah.
Why don't you report back? And that's perfect. Why don't you report back in 6 months on how the program's going, and if it's a smashing success, maybe we'll do it citywide.
Right. I mean, the assumption is that you'll catch up with the queue of 60 permits and that you'll have some experience with this new sort of fee schedule, and then it would be great to have places like Hollywood and maybe one day the Northeast San Fernando Valley to be able to sort of, enjoy the same prosperity that this program presumably will have.
Are we looking for 6 months from the date we hire someone, or 6 months from?
From the time you hire someone and the program really gets up and running.
Okay, then
Not 6 months from
then the
today.
data
That
of it
doesn't really help.
would justify, coming back.
But that would be great.
We also plan to take this to the Board of Public Works because this is the board policy. So that's what we.
Well, they got to earn their pay somehow.
And again, part of this motion is also to ask you to review the 7-foot requirement and shorten that as well. And if we could move this item as amended, if there's no objection, we'll pass this item as well. And with no other business, we are adjourned.
Good stuff.